Hello, and welcome to Miami, the Borderline Chronicles. Miami occupies the border between the sea and the Everglades, between the U.S. and the rest of the world, between the real and the imagined. Our conversations explore the when, where, why in this place. My name is Tim Schmand, and I'm your host this evening. Joining us is Jacek Kolasinski, founding director of the Radcliffe Incubator of Art and Design in the FIU College of Communications, Architecture, and the Arts, an associate professor of art at the Art and Art History Department of FIU, where he previously served as the department chair for 6 years. Jacek is an interdisciplinary artist and curator whose work is rooted in an international dialogue between two worlds, the old world of Europe in Krakow, Poland, and the new world of the United States in multicultural Miami. Jacek, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me here.
This is so exciting for me. We had met about 4 years ago now in the studios at FIU on Miami Beach, and you were doing some work with the Virgin of, how do you say that?
Virgin Mary of Częstochowa, or Black Madonna for some.
And can you talk to, this is one of those great collisions of culture in Miami that I think you would be the only person who would discover it.
Well, I think we need to go back to 1991 when I arrived to Miami. And as a newly arrived immigrant, I was looking for vestiges of something that was familiar. And I remember one day walking around South Beach, and I discovered Tap Tap Restaurant. And Tap Tap Restaurant had this very beautiful, colorful truck. What Tap Tap is a kind of transportation vehicle used in Haiti that serves as a bus, as a taxi, maybe more like a bus. And the whole car was festooned with beautiful paintings. And on the one side of that car, on the fender, there's a painting that resembles Black Virgin Mary of Częstochowa. I was perplexed. I was like, what is this doing here? Mm-hmm. Why is it here? What's the context of that? And I remember looking at books at the library at the university. I think there was a professor who taught at that time something on syncretism in the kind of context of visual culture of South Florida. And I talked to her, and he says, well, maybe look at that book. And I started digging deeper into a narrative of the Polish-Haitian narratives of what that stuff was about. How did Polish images were transplanted from the neighborhoods of Poland, from Shrine of Częstochowa to the hills of Haiti. And I think that's how this journey started.
And so you got to Miami in 1991?
Yeah, that's right.
And so in 1991, what was taking place in Poland?
So 1991, as probably some of our listeners would remember, there was something what was called the Iron Curtain not many years before 1991, and that thing was destroyed. So the kind of bipolar division of the world to the west and east, with kind of Soviet-dominated countries and the free world on the other side, essentially ceased to exist. That situation was over, and again, I think first election in Poland with Lech Wałęsa, with Solidarity movement, with the fall of Berlin Wall, it was very exciting time. So I was at the time at the Jagiellonian University. I started my education at the university probably like in 1990, 89. I'm dating myself here, but exciting times, right? So we are seeing the free election. We're seeing the new prime minister of Poland. We see American Polish Nobel laureate Czesław Miłosz coming for the inauguration lecture at the university. All great. And I think for the first time in 1991, I was able to actually travel outside of the Iron Curtain to come to the States. And my father lived in Miami since the 1970s, so I got furnished with appropriate documents to come to Miami and came over to discover the world.
And where were you living in Poland at the time?
I'm from Krakow, so I grew up in Krakow. Krakow is an old university city with a kind of a legacy going back to maybe before 10th century. There were the first kind of fortifications in Krakow that we can date, but it's much older city than that, and it's a very Catholic city with many monasteries, with convents, and there are, as a joke, is Krakow is kind of a small Rome with so many churches kind of spread through the meanders of the kind of medieval Gothic.
So your
Romanesque.
dad is living here since the 70s.
Yeah, he came here in the 70s.
And so you arrive in Miami, and what was your first?
Well, so there's an anecdote here too. In 1991, we're in the midst of the war in the Gulf, right? Mm-hmm. I'm flying Pan American flight on the February 13th. So all my friends are like, "Are you crazy? You're flying to America on the 13th of February." I'm like, "It's not Friday. It's probably fine." I don't think it was, but anyway. So I come here, and mind, it's February in Poland. The sky is gray. It's cold. The plane needs to be defrosted before it flies out of Warsaw Airport, and I land in Miami, in this lavish, colorful, tropical city, and it was a bit of a shock, just thermal shock. Maybe that's kind of a good description. But also, I kind of end up in a city where, there's so much interesting stuff happening on the level of multicultural kind of landscape, where many languages appear to the right and left. Krakow is this old homogeneous city. It's a city where, again, things were pretty stabilized to whatever point. So, I mean, the way Miami shocked me first was that I didn't understand how to move around this city, because here's this grid and people say, go north. I'm like, I don't know what north is. To me, understanding city was based on an idea, well, when you see St. Florian's Gate, go right, and then you will see St. Mary's Church. And those landmarks were dictating your kind of relation to history, to understanding your landscape, to kind of connect it to a position where you were really woven into a fabric of some kind of narrative. So here I'm in Miami finding something, what is some kind of narrative that I recognize, and here's this tap track, right? So I think we're going back to this story. And my curiosity, I studied history in Poland, so I was anxious to find out what was the connection. And, everybody in Poland knows about some kind of invasion of Saint-Domingue, Santo Domingo. I mean, however we call this in the Polish language. We know some narratives about Polish legionaries, Polish brigades that were sent under Napoleon to Haiti. But beyond that, I don't think a lot of the narrative surfaces beyond that, right? So, everybody knows.
Well, and it's the distance between Krakow and Haiti.
Yeah,
I mean, because proximity is everything. But go on. Yeah,
some 5,000.
Right.
Yeah. So I remember, I ended up eventually going to university, and I moved from history department, that's what I studied in Poland, to international relations. And I had very interesting classmates over there. So there were some people from Trinidad, there were some people from Haiti, and we started talking about this. And somebody was helping one of the professors who was writing a paper about architecture in Haiti that was inspired by some Slavic archetypes. And I remember asking questions, what is that about? And they're like, well, you're Polish, maybe you should know more about that. So we started talking about it, and then eventually I got to know people who were from Haiti who had Polish last names. And it was fascinating for me to kind of build these narratives. And then I wrote a paper in undergrad about connection of the Black Virgin of Częstochowa to Erzoli d'Anteur, and I left it somewhere there on the back burner for a long while. And in 2015, when I was already a professor at the university for some good time, I decided to go back to it. And I noticed that gentrification of Little Haiti was coming in, and the murals that represented the very same deity, Erzoli d'Anteur de Loa, they were disappearing. They were being bleached away. They were being destroyed. And I think I grabbed my camera and went back to Little Haiti and started photographing, taking tons of photos of those murals. And my idea of a new project came to some kind of fruition as a concept of the Creole Archive project with different chapters. So the first chapter was Erzoli d'Anteur, Black Madonna. And I built an archive. And again, I think I probably should explain what I mean by archive. So I started photographing things, turning them into Polaroids, printing them into different kind of digital assets, and gluing them into standardized pieces of paper and putting my notes on this. Eventually, they were numbered, digitized. So at the end of the journey, there were over like 500 of them showing different things, from things purchased in Botanica. So there were labels from perfumes dedicated to elderly, or there were some other assets as postcards, or again, whatever I could find that was connecting those two different worlds separated by so many miles. And then they were building a narrative that essentially allowed anybody who looked at the archive to pull out of it something what was relevant for them. So that's how it functions. It functions as a tool. So, and then I showed that work in Poland at the Art Academy in Warsaw.
And what year was this? Because I want to go back to like the first paper you wrote.
Yeah, that was 1994, let's say.
Okay, so and what kind of research had you done in '94, and what conclusions had you reached?
That was a very simple stuff. It was just like, finding all the books I could find as a student in an undergrad program, whatever you can discover in a kind of written material. And I think I started talking to people who had access to botanicas, who had access to voodoo temples, and asking them, what do you think about this image? What do you know? It was just more about the narrative, like, how does this connect to the history I know? And there is a level of understanding that there's some kind of Polish connection, but not a very deep level, right? So I think when I started kind of explaining, this image has scarification patterns on the face, because in 1430s the heretics came to the church and chopped the painting. It's a very different narrative on the Haitian side. Those scars mean completely something different. But again, how do you really connect the Byzantine Odigritia type icon that, according to some scholars and legends, has Lucan tradition? So some believe that it was painted by Saint Luke on the table of the Holy Family. Then the icon was discovered by Empress Helena in Byzantium, from Byzantium somewhere in Jerusalem, and then brought to Constantinople, and then eventually it went to what we call Eastern Europe today, and then ended up in Poland. And the icon by itself goes through this fantastic journey of being repurposed, fashioned in some way. So at some point, somebody adds fleur de lis on the icon. The icon might have been painted in a particular tradition, but 1430s is a moment where the painting is destroyed. So somebody reconstructs the painting on the original wooden panels, but was the original painted with an encaustic technique, which is the wax painting? Maybe that had some Syriac elements. Maybe the icon, was connected to, again, other cultural traditions. But what we have in Poland is sort of a westernized Byzantine icon that became eventually national Polish symbol. And I would explain why. So obviously the icon is connected to the narratives of miracles. People come to the church, and they bring votive donations to kind of thank the Virgin Mary for whatever miracles they received. And out of those things, the monks in the monastery would fashion or hire jeweler makers to create skirts that cover the icon. So what you see as you enter the church is the face of the Virgin Mary, her hands, face of the baby Jesus, his feet, his hands. The rest is covered by those different, beautiful, colorful ornamentation of the precious metals and stones. And they change those skirts at different kind of points of history. So now, what connects this image to the Haitian iconography is the connection of the colors. So the colors of the skirts that functioned in 1700s in Poland, they're very much so connected to the colors that you see in Voodoo Botanicas, what you see in the Haitian tradition. So predominantly, whatever colors you experience on them, they are kind of connected to this. Then, again, the Virgin Mary's face is dark. A lot of theories. Is it because the paint has been darkened from soot of candles and incense, or was it really a painting of a woman from Syria or somewhere from the region where pigmentation of skin is different than what normally you see in the kind of Catholic Church? It's a Byzantine icon, again, representing a woman who has a darker skin, who has this very particular pattern looks like letter A on her cheek that was inflicted, like I said, by the heretics. And then the legend says when monks hired somebody to reconstruct the painting, he had a vision that the Virgin didn't want to lose that pattern. So images brought from Poland to Haiti, Saint-Domingue then, by the Polish soldiers who were sent by Napoleon to fight against the Haitian Revolution. But I think that needs further explanation. So let's finish with the image, and then we'll go back to the Polish legionaries to kind of explain that. So what happens is the revolutionaries in Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, they see that their formidable opponents, they carry an image that seems to be, in some level, familiar. It's a woman with darker face and scarification. Scarification is often ubiquitous in the African tradition. So, for example, Fon people would use scarification to ornate faces of the noble families in Nigeria and so on. So you can do a lot of research seeing those things. So, again, some of the enslaved people who fought in the revolution would encounter an image brought by Poles showing a woman with darker features and scars, and assume that it was somebody very important, that it might have been a deity that served a purpose, that it was a woman warrior possibly, however it is. And they fused her eventually with the representation of a deity called Erzolidanteur that was evoked in the night of Bois Caiman in 1791, where people from the northern provinces in Haiti, enslaved people, during the market day got together and took the oath to fight until they repelled the last slave owner. So, again, interesting narrative that the Virgin Mary of Częstochowa, very important in the formation of a Polish national identity, all of a sudden jumps over the seas to the Antilles and becomes another image that has a formative kind of position to somebody else's identity. So again, we can talk about creolization, and whatever happens in the context of what Guisan talks about, right?
And I'd also like to hear you talk about the Polish legionnaires who came over.
Yeah, so I think we need to kind of go back to that and explain what was happening in Poland at the time. So 1791, when Bois Caiman ceremony happens in August in Haiti, also marks an interesting historical moment in Polish history. There is a proclamation of the Polish first constitution on the May 3rd of the same year. That was an attempt to reform the country and save the country from a calamity of a partition, because eventually Poland in 1795 disappears for over 100 years from the map of Europe as an independent European state. So there were a lot of attempts by Polish patriots to regain the independence. And French Revolution appeared to Polish patriots as a chance of fighting the foes of Poland, Austrians and so on, by joining the troops in Italy at that point. So Polish legions are created in Italy to essentially aid revolutionary attempts to free Italy from a monarchical system and so on. And in Lombardia, they created a legion. A lot of soldiers who came to really be part of that formation, they came from previous military experience under Tadeusz Kościuszko's insurrection. And he's very important here to another kind of rendering of what the spirit of the legionaries was. So they were raised in a very republican, democratic position of people who understood liberté, égalité, fraternité, who understood that they were fighting for bigger, greater ideas, bringing humanity forward. Again, Kościuszko, as the leader of a Polish uprising, he created units that were composed out of Polish peasantry, and he elevated some of the fighters due to their achievements to ranks of nobility. They could become officers. There was a banner that some of them carried: "We feed you and we defend you, or we fight for you." There was a formation of soldiers who use scythes that were normally used for cutting harvest, and they were refurbished to become deadly tools deployed on the Russian artillery and military. So a lot of those guys, the Polish patriots, end up in Italy. They fight through Italian campaign. They liberate some of the Italian states, and then Napoleon comes to play as a leader of French nation, and he has very different ideas at that point. He says, well, we're not going to fight anymore with Austria. We're going to have a peace treaty at Luneville, and Napoleon stop fighting Austria. So Polish soldiers are unemployed, and their kind of position is to take oath to the newly created kingdom of Etruria. Mm-hmm. And Poles are appalled by that idea. They don't want to swear allegiance to the king. They're Republican soldiers. Mm-hmm. Liberté, égalité, fraternité.
Right. Products of the Enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. The epaulets that they had an Italian inscription that said, all three people are brothers, right?
Perfect.
They would receive instruction in reading and writing that was not normal at the time for the kind of military. And all of a sudden, they're faced with the position that they are going to be sent to some faraway land. And they didn't know if they were going to Saint-Domingue or Louisiana, but they ended up in Saint-Domingue. So what's happening in Haiti at that point? Then we have Toussaint Louverture, who really runs the country as still French colony. Toussaint did not have exactly aspirations to create a free country. He wanted to be connected to France, but he was asking for autonomy. He was asking for changes that would, again, evoke big reform of a kind of structures that were existing over there in Saint-Domingue. And again, we mentioned that revolution in Haiti started much earlier, and Louverture was a very skillful politician who maneuvered between different camps. And when Napoleon sends his brother-in-law Leclerc, the idea is that, again, maybe they didn't have a clear vision if Toussaint needed to be deposed from his powers or not, but I think that it was suspected Leclerc was coming with two sons of Toussaint as, again, possibility of really putting pressure on him. And Toussaint is kidnapped eventually. I mean, he's arrested and taken to France. He states that he's the general of the Republic, but they revoke all his rights. And Napoleon had a very, very kind of cruel position on, he didn't believe that mixed race or African descent generals should be in that rank. He wanted to move them to the lower ranks, and he really wanted French to run the military in the Saint-Domingue. But what happens after Napoleon is gone, after Toussaint is gone, Jean-Jacques Dessalines comes to the helm of the revolutionary struggle, and he has slightly different ideas than Toussaint had. And the conflict escalates to a different point, and the Polish legionaries are trapped in this. And there is a moment where General Freycinet, he requests from Polish soldiers in the city of Saint-Marc to essentially pick all the French black soldiers out of the troops, and they're ordered to kill them with the bayonets. According to Haitian historiography, Polish soldiers stood up and marched out of the city, responding to this order, "We are not butchers, we're soldiers." And again, the Haitian historiography talks about that the moment of Saint-Marc, where Polish soldiers refused to participate in this brutal treatment of the soldiers who were suspected for possible desertion and joining Dessalines, get them a lot of respect from Dessalines. And Constitution of Haiti, proclaimed in 1805, in the Article 13, says that Poles naturalized by the government, they have right to be citizen of the newly created Haitian Republic. And the next article says that from that point on, all the people who are citizens of the country will be called black. So that's how we have Polonais Noirs, right? And again, they're the source of the image of the Erzuli, of the Black Virgin of Częstochowa being fused with Erzuli. So did
any of to your knowledge, did any of the people the mercenaries who were Polish go back to Poland, or did they?
So again, I think maybe we should correct the kind of idea that they're mercenaries. They're not mercenaries, and a lot of people kind of think about it that way. They're Polish formations created under the banner of the French Revolution, who still carry the Polish insignia. They had structure of the kind of military units, and then those who were sent with the first wave of soldiers to Saint-Domingue, they were incorporated into French units. So they were essentially French military.
Right.
One of the first generals who was sent to Saint-Domingue, who was a Polish mixed-race general, his name was Prince Jablonowski. He was sent over there and died in Jérémie out of malaria, or yellow fever, whichever disease killed him. But they sent about 5,000 of those Polish soldiers. The casualties were immensely huge, and again, the climate proved to be the worst foe of the European troops. Polish soldiers, again, trained in the kind of formation fighting. All of a sudden, they faced a very different kind of warfare. The climate was, again, something what they were not used to. Their uniforms were not equipped to it. I mean, very quickly they started ditching the kind of fancy Napoleonic chacos and wearing straw hats, right? So, according to Pachoński, who is probably one of the most important historians who wrote in the 90s about the Antillean tragedy of the Polish soldiers, he estimates that maybe 400 defected from the 5,000 that were sent over there, and then the numbers that actually stay over as Haitian citizens were much smaller. So there was also the moment where some of those who were already granted citizenship decided to go back to Europe. So Dessalines organizes passage for them. They are sent to Jamaica. And the governor of Jamaica has a very different idea for those Polish soldiers, or Polish-Haitian soldiers at that point. And he says, well, they would be just essentially inscripted into a British army. But Dessalines responds, no, you can't do this. They're a citizen of a newly created republic. You have to send them back. And he put some military political pressure. They were sent back. And eventually some of them, via United States, went back to Europe. And again, the narratives of the Polish soldiers in Poland are somewhat skewed, because I think everybody needs to remember that whoever was coming back from Saint-Domingue, from Haiti, from the Antilles to Poland, they were still hoping that Napoleon was going to recreate Poland. So conversation of desertion and insubordination to Napoleon was something what was scooped under the carpet very quickly. And the accounts that were written by the officers who returned, often they create a lot of opacity over how the history is being told.
Right.
But there's some kind of crazy story. So there are a couple of officers who were fighting in Haiti who essentially became pirates in the Caribbean. So that's another chapter. It is another conversation maybe. But there were three of them at least. Who one of them, his name is Ignatius Blammer of the Irish descendancy, whose family came to Poland. First to Russia, to Peter the Great, who I think served as artillery officers, and then eventually they became Polish noblemen and stayed in Poland, fought in Polish uprisings and insurrections against Russia and so on. And Blammer, he essentially evacuated one of the hospitals from southern Haiti with Polish and French soldiers. He fought very bravely over there. I think he was maybe at the rank of major or colonel. I can't really remember now exactly what was his rank, but he evacuates this hospital, and then he's going on a ship with Polish and French soldiers, and he's intercepted by the British Navy. And somehow he was very involved in the Masonic rites. He negotiated that French would be taken as POWs, but Poles would be let go. And Poles and Blammer sail to Cuba, from what I remember, and they start buccaneering on the side of French, harassing British Navy. And there is, I think, an encounter with the British Navy with one of the ships, and his ship is, I think, pretty badly destroyed through this I think, encounter. And he sails towards the shore of Florida. And some of the stories talk about Blammer being pressured by his companions over there, by fellow buccaneers, to create a Polish kingdom in Florida. So again, crazy story. I mean, we don't know where he's actually ended.
That's one of the reasons why we talk about this stuff on the radio, because these are ideas that are out there that no one knows about, or very few people know about.
So So that then, how many people stayed? It's hard to really estimate. There are a couple of cities. So there's Kazal and Font-de-Blanc, where you can find Polish descendants, and there's another very kind of interesting story connected to more of a kind of contemporary Polish connection to Haiti. So Grotowski, who is a very well-known Polish theater director, he followed the roster of Polish officers who were deployed to Saint-Domingue, and he found somebody with the name of Felix Grotowski, whom he assumed was his ancestor. So he goes back to the town Kazal, where majority of the Poles settled down, and he encounters an Ongan whose name is Amon Fremon, and Amon tells him flatly, "I'm Polish as you are." And they developed this interesting conversation because Fremon was interested in finding more about his own Polishness. Grotowski was interested in the idea of what is the possession of a person by law. How does that function? He wanted to find out more about this.
And you may want to say what an Ongan is.
Yeah, Ongan is a priest. So,
okay,
so it's a voodoo priest. Yeah. Right. So the kind of interesting narrative that comes out of it that Amon Fremon comes to Poland, works with Grotowski, teaches his theater about the idea of possession. And in 1981, there is a martial law imposed in Poland.
Right.
And
Jaruzelski
becomes, again, the leader who really changes the kind of trajectory of history at that point by deploying military on the streets, suppressing solidarity movement. And the Ongan from Haiti, the Amon Fremon, had to go back. But there's a beautiful film made by two Polish directors. The film is called The Art of Disappearing. Konopka and Rosołowski, those are the artists who made that film. And it's kind of a recreation of the story of Fremon going to Poland. It's a very lavish narrative where they develop kind of a concept where the Ongan connects to an idea of that he's the only one who can save Poland from the oppression of communists. He sees parallels between Jaruzelski and Papadak. He thinks that both of them are in some way possessed by Baron Samedi, one of the Loas, and he kind of thinks Jaruzelski wears dark glasses.
Right.
He's very
just like
stiff,
Papadak.
Just like Papadak. So what the narrative of Konopka and Rosołowski talk about is the idea that Fremon offers his connection to the world of spirits to liberate Poland from oppression. He perceives Lech Wałęsa, the leader of opposition, who wears in his lapel pin Virgin Mary of Częstochowa. He connects him immediately to the devotee of Erzuli. He thinks about the Pope John Paul, who was again very connected to this whole narrative of Virgin Mary of Częstochowa, Black Madonna, as another person who is fighting against the same forces, but he knows that they can't really succeed without his help. So he offers his connection to the world of spirits to free Poles from oppression of communism. And then he returns to Haiti.
Well, and it goes back, your entire oeuvre lately is the exploration of creolization.
Yeah.
And it just shows that can spread as far across the world as we let it go. And then when we come into it, it changes us.
I think, yeah, we'll observe because, I kind of think, my own sort of experience of somebody who lives longer outside of the country I was born in. What is that I acquired here from all the cultural assets that I'm discovering in Miami, Miami, Caribbean, and so on? How did they change me as a person? How do I connect to the history of people who were expats from Poland who became Polonais Noirs? How do I connect myself to a narrative of somebody like Amon Fremon? And again, my better half, she's half Haitian, half Mexican. The cultural narratives we have at home, they're very different than they would happen if I stayed back there in Poland. Right?
Well, okay, so for me, when I think I'm from up north where it's dark and gloomy, and
I relate to that, yes.
And so when I'm down here, just the light alone changes the way I think about things. And because where I'm from was pretty homogeneous, this place is anything but. So you're confronted constantly with the other, and you are in fact the other as well. So you have to sort of do a negotiation that wasn't required back where we're from. Back where we're from, we're just them. And here, we're us, but grander part of them.
So I think, going back to the root of word creolization, creolite, and criollos, right? Like, the definition is very fluid. It changed on many kind of instances, but, like, the origin sort of comes from a very oppressive system that was connected to systema de casta that the Spanish Empire kind of imposed in the New World to kind of demarcate the position of the purity of Spanish Iberian blood, pureza de sangre, and so on. But according to that theory, somebody who, let's say, was of Iberian parents, who was born in the New World, became a criollo because they were disconnected from the maternal world, and by blood they were connected to it. So again, the definition changed eventually. Like, would move into some other kind of nuances. But, like, the creolite and creolidad feels like a very appropriate term to kind of look as a lens to analyze Miami from, right?
Especially from where you're from,
Yeah.
and what influences have affected you and brought you here.
Yeah. So, again, it's a journey. Like, that project is again on display now with the green space Miami.
So, do you want to talk about how you manifest this as art?
Yeah.
Because I think that's as interesting as everything else.
So, I think when, again, my training as an artist, I've been, trained as a painter, I've been trained as a digital media artist, but here I kind of decided to move in another direction. I look at archive as a new modality for kind of creating narratives. Again, sort of impulse from text from Derrida, like archive fever. If there's no archive, there's no history. So how do you historicize creolite? How do you historicize the Miami version of that? How do you historicize the experience of something what is being gentrified and destroyed in the city? So I built, again, something what I probably spoke about a little bit before, about 500 records, right, that are created as an idea of bringing assets from the city that are really representation of the process. So either photos of murals that you encountered in Miami. I mean, I've been to places outside of Miami, places in Haiti. I've been into places in Louisiana that I kind of find some traces of the Erzuli cult and so on, and connection to the Virgin Mary on that level. But the idea was to really amass those objects of visual culture, organize them by subtext, typologies, and to allow them to sort of function as a tool. So that's one level of a kind of two-dimensional thing. So, and you can find in an archive anything from postal stamps to postcards to family sort of emblems connected to call the Virgin Mary, and then things acquired on eBay and other places that really are connected by this interesting thread of what is Polish and Haitian, or what could function in both places as some kind of visual culture emblematic iconographic system that really binds this experience together. And then the other side of the project connects to representation of statues of Black Virgin Mary of Częstochowa and then Erzuli. So I acquired in Poland, or actually I commissioned in Poland, a statue of a Black Virgin of Częstochowa that was carved by the Polish Catholic carver. And I purchased in the Botanica of Saint Michel in Miami a plaster statue of Erzuli. And then what I did with them, I scanned them using 3D technology. So that's what you've seen at the studio at Miami Beach Urban Studio, where we had, when we have over 50 3D printers and some scanning machines. And I created so those, let's say, those statues, acquired one in Poland, one in Miami. They became my meta originals. Then I scanned them, created from them derivative material that was 3D printed, and then the 3D scanning and 3D printing creates some kind of embedded errors or aberration from the kind of original. So I kind of really like this as an idea, because it was very kind of similar to how creolization adopts something that has meaning, and then that meaning is changed slightly, or some new meaning is added. And then so we 3D printed them. They were 3D printed with using filaments that are created out of sugar and corn. And I think that's very important for this narrative. Sugar and corn are in the center of the narration of a colonialism. Sugar is the curse, right? it's the addiction of the European world. Sugar is produced in Saint-Domingue. It creates fortunes, but it enslaves people from another part of the world. It kills them at the work. So I think what was important here that those statues are now brought together to those workshops that I run with my family. So my father-in-law was born in Haiti. His wife was born in Mexico, and then my better half sister and her two daughters are participating in those. And everybody has a very different kind of connection to cultural sort of relation to the Caribbean, to their own kind of perception who they are. And when they paint them with me, they bring their own kind of narrative. So our niece at that time, who was 13, she painted something what was important to her. And she's like, well, I like peaches. That's why I painted peaches on one of the statues. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with the religious sort of language of attributes attached to neither Virgin Mary or Verzoli. So I think you've seen those things. They're on display right now at the Green Space Miami, in the subsection of the Creole archive that is called Polonais Noir. So I think you see some of them woven into this narrative as again some kind of subdivisions of things that are connecting two very, very distant worlds. And again, I was working on this iteration of the exhibition with the friend and colleague for many years, Stephanie Chancy, of Haitian descendancy. And she created another kind of narrative that was important for her from her own perspective, how she kind of understood the history.
So, and I've noticed in that space and in what I've looked at online of yours, that the documentation you create resembles passports in a way.
Correct. So I think what is important that we create an entire language of bureaucracy here. So there are rubber stamps. So when new record is entered into the archive, it's stamped. There are attributes for subsets, and then there are stamps that are filled in where, again, the location of the space is kind of noted. A short description is done. So kind of going back to kind of archival practice, librarian practice, or however you kind of do it. And again, they would be kept in the box that it's constructed for this to kind of deal with humidity and so on. And again, I think what was important to create also functional conduits to create even more, I would say, just kind of legal justification for this project. So, for example, I design and commissioned some stamps in Poland. So you can essentially design a stamp and create a short edition of stamps that would be issued by Polish postal services. And I use them to send postcards of some of Miami murals around. So the stamps were canceled and they were sent to a place when I have an exhibition in the National Sculpture Center in Orońską. So that's another kind of a project, how this became, again, transnational, how I'm kind of connecting those boundaries together, right? You spoke that I kind of live between those two convergent worlds, and I think I kind of create my own world in some way. So the other kind of thing that was important over there was connecting material to some kind of tangible. And again, the postcard that is sent is contains a message. It goes from one place to the other. There's you connect geography. You build all that. I use some Polaroids. So there were some photos taken, let's say in Miami. They were reprinted in a Polaroid film and then again attached to those cards and sent around.
So, we've talked about Haiti and the Black Madonna, but I want to talk about one of your earlier works, The Generals.
Oh yeah, that was another kind of concept. So I think it's interesting enough, you bring it here because some of the elements of Generals appears here. So when I was a kid, my grandfather used to bring every day when he came from his work or whatever he was doing, he would bring me a toy soldier that kind of was bought in the little shop by the bus stop, right? And then I had this huge collection of little toys, and I think they were kind of connected to lessons of history, right? So I created this kind of archive based on an idea of Polish generals, and I looked at the kind of particular kind of cross-section of a Polish history. I looked at 1918, when Poland is recreated as a free state after the end of the World War II, to to, I think, 2015, if I remember right. And I look at different people who were generals, whatever formations they served, whatever regimes they were attached to, and then create a kind of similar archive by taking little toy soldiers I purchased somewhere in Warsaw in front of a historical museum and photographed them in front of important landmarks in the city to kind of recreate my own kind of historical narratives. But similarly, for the project of Polonais Noir, I work with one of my colleagues to create little images of the Polish soldiers who really are not represented in too many kind of historical documents. I mean, there are some paintings of the uniforms. I mean, there may be some sketches, but I think, again, you could never find them at the little store and buy them as a toy to kind of create this historical experience. So we 3D printed them and I hand painted them. So there's a subset of those little toy soldiers, and also they're kind of converted into AR experience. So you come to the gallery, you can see them.
And so just for the public, what's the address of the gallery? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's 72nd and Biscayne Boulevard.
So 72nd and Biscayne Boulevard, you have your display?
Yeah, and the exhibition is going to be open until the 18th of August. I think that our closing ceremony would be at that time. So, if anybody who is listening wants to come over and see, please join us. And I think I'll be happy to talk to you about the Polish-Haitian entanglements, as I call them. And
can we go back to the generals for just a moment?
Yeah.
So I think one of the interesting things that I noticed when looking at the generals is that you have these sort of regal little toy soldiers placed all over locations in Krakow, I guess, I don't know, Warsaw?
I think in many places.
Okay, so but at the end, I noticed that there's one photograph of a general who is not whimsical, and I think it's Jaruzelski.
So yes, I think I paired them up, the fictional toys, with stock photos that I pulled out of different documents. So yes, Jaruzelski has this ubiquitous face that I remember from 1981. Right. From
that I remember.
When he established, when he imposed the martial law in Poland. So again, I remember this day like today. I was it was morning when we all woke up and nothing worked. There was no TV. There was no radio. And then at one point, the announcement of the very ominous guy in the uniform with general ranks on this in front of some kind of military banner. He was proclaiming the imposition of the martial law on the state of Poland, and it was very, very uncertain times for us.
So martial law was implemented in 81.
In 81, yeah.
And lasted till 91.
Well, it lasted until I believe 83, when it was liberated. It was some provisions of the martial law were taken away, so the curfews and so on. But pretty much from 1981 until 89, you have the kind of skirmishes of power. There are protests. There are, again, on every 13 of the month, in the anniversary of the imposition of martial law, there were patriotic masses in churches where people pray for those who were arrested, who were interned. Again, I think it's a very kind of politically dynamic climate at the time in Poland. And again, it's interesting, we talk about elderly downtown. People in Poland are going back to churches to pray to the Virgin Mary. They have all of those special ceremonies, liturgies where they pray for return of freedom to Poland. So very, very, very kind of different times.
And so you were under martial law from 81
until 83, I believe. It was some provisions were lifted, but. Again, the morning of December 13, 1981, where tanks were deployed to the streets, where Solidarity members were arrested, taken out of their homes and taken to internment camps. It was a very different landscape, political landscape. I mean, think about today, European Union, and a Polish student could travel from Portugal to Latvia, and without being questioned or stopped. At the time, remember as a kid at school, we had to carry our student IDs, and student ID would say what sort of shift of school you were assigned to. And if you were discovered in the street at the wrong time, the school would be notified by police authority or militia authority that you're potentially doing something horrifying. Right? So, and again, hard things to remember in a way, but at the same time, those are our lessons where our democracy was being forged, right? Out of this whole brutal experience of martial law, I think new things came in, and there was this election in '89 that again, for the first time, I think Poles could decide about what that election was about, right?
And you get back to Poland now?
Yeah, I go to Poland all the time. So sometimes it's 2 years, two times a year, 3 times a year. It really depends, of my schedule. But I work actively with, again, art organizations over there. So I mentioned the National Sculpture Center in Orońsko, where I created another iteration of this project. So actually 2 of them. So one of the projects, National Sculpture Center, it's located in the kind of old palace complex. So you have the chapel, the main manor house, the barns, the stables, all the kind of support buildings, and they're kind of turned into studio spaces for artists. And what I did at one point, it was the residency just right before COVID kind of exploded on our shores in Miami. I just came back from that residency. And what I did over there, I used images from my archive that represented Miami Botanicas and images of Erzuli to project them on buildings in Poland, to kind of create this kind of nocturnal narrative where people from neighboring neighborhoods of the art space in Orońsko would come over and look over the fence. Something was glowing, something was colorful, something was familiar yet not, right?
And what is the response in Poland to this syncretization?
So I think, a lot of interest. I mean, then I was invited to actually stage another exhibition in Orońsko that was part of the Creole Archive, and that one deals with another aspect of the story. It connects us back to 1915, to American occupation of Haiti. And there's this particular soldier who was sent to Haiti as an American Marine. He's of a Polish descent. He descended from Polish family from Pennsylvania, from Pittston. If I remember right, he grew up on a mining in a mining communities over there, and he decided to join Marines to see the world. And he ends up in Haiti. He was not sent to the European sort of front of action. I mean, it just barely by the end of the World War I. So American occupation of Haiti happens in 1915. So just 1 year. 1 year after war started. And what really happens over there, he connects to the local community. He connects to the community of Polish people in Kazal. He's aware of them. But then, and again, I don't want to go into another long narrative about Faustin Wirkus, the king of Lagonav. But again, my exhibition over there in Orońsko is really connected to the kingdom of Lagonav, to a woman who crowned Wirkus as the king of that island. Her name was Timemen, and we don't really know a lot about her. We know more about Wirkus. He wrote a book about his life in Haiti, about his reign of Lagonav, but she, who is so instrumental here, she's kind of ghosted by the layers of opacity of history, the shrouds of that kind of thick representation that pushes her somewhere else on the back burner, but I think she's central to it. So in Orońsko, in this exhibition that I created, I use space that formerly served as a greenhouse for the aristocratic palace. The the space is called Orangerie, and that's where we essentially stage this. So again, I think a lot of interesting things imposed by the architecture, because the space is a kind of big glass vitrine, right, that x-rays history. So I'm kind of dealing with idea of what are the attitudes today in Poland to our own kind of identity. How do we connect to the otherness? And Wirkus being this kind of dominatory figure with a military uniform that is a copy of uniforms created by the American occupation forces for the Gendarmerie de Haiti or the Garde de Haiti, wearing the British pit helmet. He kind of dominates the landscape, but there are some of the subdivisions over there kind of destabilizing this narrative and empowering the woman who kind of oversees this space from another angle. So again, I think it was a great write-up about this exhibition in the Polish National Sculpture magazine, and I was very happy with how people really responded to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, we have pretty much talked this hour right away.
Wow.
What are you working? Is there anything briefly that you're working on now that you want to share, or is it everything still like being worked on? Or
No, I think the archive is again something what I think I may need to work a little bit longer with. I think there are some other narratives, talking about Montfremont, talking about those ideas. I think that again this archive is growing. I think I'm working with maybe different curators now and different scholars to kind of contextualize it. But what is really kind of important to me, that the opportunity at the Green Space created a hub for community meetings where people with different kind of historical connections to Poland and Haiti come together and they meet each other. And I think that kind of touches upon other sort of practice that I do as an artist, which is social practice. So to me, the artwork is not on what hangs on the walls. It's not on what is kind of produced and stamped together and displayed, but the community collider. So yesterday we had this really beautiful potluck that was organized in conjunction with my new friend, a professor from New York, Juanita, who came over as a Haitian visitor, straight out of curiosity, kind of trying to figure out what I was doing over there. And then half an hour later, we were discussing an idea of bringing people together for the potluck, to bring Poles, Haitians, and other Caribbeans to kind of talk about creativity and some ideas, how we can make the world better for us.
That's great. And, we'll have to have you back sometime, because I know your whole community engagement is a whole other package.
That's another story.
Yeah, that's another story. So we'll have to do that again sometime. But I think we're coming to the end of our show. And Jacek Kolasinski, thank you so much for being on Miami, the Borderline Chronicles. And we'll be back sometime in the future with a new guest. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.